Okay. Hi again. I'm Deanna. This is my mom, Rosemary.
Hello.
We're gonna continue the conversation we were having from the last video. Um, some of the feedback we got was people wanted to hear my side a little bit. It was we don't have a script, we don't have an outline. We're just kind of winging this. And you were saying such good things last time. I didn't want to interrupt. I wanted to just let you flow.
Granted me a lot of grace, like you usually do.
Yeah, let's see. I don't really know where to start this, I guess. Yeah. I grew up in the church. I left it at about 20 years old. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It was my whole worldview. It was all my family, my friends, my community. Especially living in Utah, it was such a huge part of my life and something that I wanted to continue to have in my life. But that for a myriad of reasons became less and less feasible for me to have in my life. And I don't think we need to go into specifics of what led me away. But it was like what I would want people to know is that it wasn't easy, and it wasn't the easy road. It was really hard and really painful, especially to want it in my life, to want it to be a part of my life, but to find myself unable to continue to have it in my life. So the crux of everything that happened that kind of led up to that, what happened for me, and I don't know that we've ever really talked about this,
I was
but
just thinking that.
yeah, the experience that really kind of told me, like, okay, this is not for me. I essentially did what Joseph Smith did. I went out and I asked God to tell me that this was the right path for me, that this was for me. I begged, and the answer I got was a big fat no. Look at that timing.
When you put your phone on silence and it still doesn't silence, that's kind of weird.
That's funny.
Yeah, that was kind of some beautiful music to what you were saying.
Yeah, that was funny. So yeah, I the answer that came back was no. This is not for you. This is not your path. And that was incredibly painful.
So I'm just going to interject really quick because I do think that you had told me that. Okay. And like many people, parents, or anyone in the church, you start assuming, you must have done it wrong, or that answer was coming from the wrong source. I don't go there anymore just because, yeah, the journey took me on a unexpected, as I referenced in the last video, as I related, when God was saying, stop pretending you know all the answers because you don't. And just rethinking, can I just trust that any earnest prayer is going to be answered? And that's the answer she got. And just accept that's the answer she got.
Yeah, it was hard for me to accept too. I questioned it, and I felt abandoned, and I felt betrayed, and yeah, it was it was hard for me to come to terms with that answer as well. And I didn't express to anyone really, except some of my friends, that I was moving away from the church, that I was really leaving. I didn't bring it up with my family for years, really, because I was so afraid, because I knew growing up in it, I knew what you're told, the reasons why people leave, that you want to sin and not feel bad, or that you want to take the easy way out and you're lazy. And these really hurtful views about it, because for myself and everyone I know who's ever left the church, it was never easy. It was never the easy thing to do. The easier thing to do would just be to keep the status quo, keep all your friends, keep all your family, potentially your job, your community, keep it all intact. That's much easier than upending your entire life and your entire worldview, potentially losing relationships, family, friends, so many things. It was so difficult. And just having so much fear that I would be rejected, that I wouldn't be accepted, that I would be unlovable or unloved. Or the idea that the only feeling that my family or people would have towards me was the idea that I needed to be saved, that they needed to save me somehow from this. Which, has brought up a lot of really conflicting feelings, because it is like kind of insulting to have someone else tell you, like, you think you know what's good for you, but I actually know better than you do what's good for you. Because we don't for anyone. We don't know anyone else's path. Right. We don't know what anyone else is here to learn. Maybe they are exactly where they need to be. And so we really can't say.
Right. That has been a real learning point for me. And it took, getting some glimpse of the pain that it created. Probably, in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, I began to understand, by the time I'd heard some things from you, Trevor, when he left, some things from Emily, but like 3, that this wasn't an easy thing. And I started, and I don't claim to get it. It's because it's not what I've done it's not what I have done, although I have had that experience with other things that I felt super strongly about and then broke away. And then it wasn't, I began to have a little bit of a taste. I remember thinking, this is probably what it feels like to be back in those situations are very triggering, or for people to, assume that you left because you needed things to be easier, or that it was the easy, lazy path. It has been a journey for me to, again, it was so pivotal for me and knocked me off my high horse to have God say, stop pretending you know all the answers, because you don't. And I can't, when I hear comments now, and I'm always, checking myself, like, I don't know why they did that. And how can I make a judgment, I am much more sensitive now to the flavor of things in conversations, say in a Relief Society setting or something. If it feels like this sense of superiority, we know better and they don't, I am uneasy with that, and I will usually try to find a respectful way to kind of reframe what's happening, in a respectful but kind of clear way, because I am trying to learn that better and better myself. And I see as a culture that we definitely have that problem as a faith culture. And I don't think that's unique to Latter-day Saints, but, this idea that, we know we've got it and you don't, or you walked away from it, and we need to get you back. But that's not even exactly what you're talking about, but just this idea. For me, it comes down to like a superiority complex, kind of.
Yeah, it feels like that on the receiving end of it. It does feel like that the person saying that thinks they know better than I do about how to live my life. They have it figured out and I don't.
Right. And when I come from that perspective, it was so, like, I could almost taste it, the difference of coming from that perspective. I know better and you don't, and I need to get you back. And as altruistic, as good as it might seem that I need to get you back. I knew the difference when it was coming from a place of, when my perspective and feelings about you or anyone is coming from a place of just compassion and love and a desire to understand. And then I began to be aware of, wow, what is it? Is it fear that puts me in that superiority? Is that what's fueling this? You know, we like to think it's love. Anyway, it's still a peeling back of, you know, what that's all about. I just know that it doesn't feel right now when I find myself leaning into that superiority, whether it's with politics or anything, that it doesn't feel okay. But it definitely began first in this relationship.
Yeah.
And God telling me, stop pretending you know all the answers, because you don't, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up, fear and love. Because it is, you know, I know that people, you know, were concerned for me when I left out of a place of love. But sometimes that ends up getting lost in translation. You think you're showing someone love by saying, this is what you should be doing, here's what you should, you know, because that's true for you. And you think you're showing them love, but really it comes across as control and
condescension
and non-acceptance, as rejection, which none of those things are love. It's you don't feel loved when someone comes at you with that energy. It doesn't feel loving, and it drives you further away. It actually accomplishes the opposite of what you're going for.
Yeah, because it's not love. It's never going to accomplish something good.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, that's really the heart of it. Like, how, like, does this feel like love, or does this feel like something else? And if it feels like something else, then yeah, it's trying to recalibrate, trying to get on track with, okay, what's this about, and how can I feel real love in this interaction with my child, with another person, with an ideology, or with sickness, with any number of things, you know, just coming from a space of being open to learning, and not this just a two-dimensional way of looking at everything, a linear way of looking at everything.
Yeah, a very black and white.
Yeah, very black and white kind of thing. And that kind of talk used to make me very nervous.
Yeah. I mean, I think that for a lot of people, I think it makes them very nervous.
We like the security of black and white.
Yeah.
And things very defined.
Yeah. Yeah. Our human brains very much, we were just talking about this, very much want to put things into containers, into boxes, into little categorized boxes that are easy to digest, and you know exactly what it is. And but that's not how life is.
And it's all about safety. We want to be safe.
Yeah.
We want to be safe. And I think the story I buy into more and more is, I'm safe in this space of love, because God is love. And so anything that feels ajar from that probably isn't taking me the right direction.
Yeah.
in my way of thinking or interacting.
Yeah.
Including about myself.
Yeah. I think because we're
fundamentally
yeah
in my relationship with myself.
If we're applying those judgments to other people, we're applying those judgments to ourselves, and and we need to be applying. And the more love we apply to ourselves, the more love we can apply to others. I mean, it really is love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you don't love yourself, you cannot really show love to anyone else. And yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about that, and how how that feels very uncomfortable in a Latter-day Saint culture, not the gospel of Jesus Christ, but in a Latter-day Saint culture and in a Christian culture. It often feels very uncomfortable, the idea of any kind of self-love. We were talking about that.
Yeah. That it's this weird like it's been so confused with pride, I feel like. And a lot of people feel like, I don't want to feel
Like an
feel
arrogance,
prideful.
a
Yeah, I don't want to
selfish-
feel
a selfishness in a way that hurts others.
Yeah, yeah. But there is so much space in between that, and between like total like pride and then total ego and total non-ego. There's a lot of space in between there. That's a healthier place. That's a healthier balance.
Yeah. And how that relates to what we're talking about, because I think it really does. For me, more and more, as the layers get peeled back, you know, it really is learning things about myself. And when I think, you know, opening the door to the possibility that I didn't know the answers, which I never claimed that I did, but I didn't realize that I was putting myself in a position where I was saying, I do know the answers, and I need to have you, you know, come back to these answers that I know.
Yeah.
But once I opened the door of, you know, say God loving you and giving you an answer that said, no, this church is not the path for you. Once I cracked that door open, that was possible that God could tell you that. It did open space. This is an interesting way, because I'm trying to, you know, connect the dots, you know, open space for a lot of possibilities. You know, like cracking the myth, busting the myth that I can love myself.
Yeah.
Busting the myth that I can't love myself. You know, that would be the myth, that I'm not supposed to love myself. Busting the myth that it would be wrong to think that there would be any other path than this path that God would tell someone. And for me, that has been a very good thing, to begin to crack that in a way that has allowed me to feel so much more of God's love. That God's love is so much more than I thought it was. And I guess that's the point I want to make, that God's love is so much more than I thought it was.
Yeah.
And opening my heart to your possibilities, being directed in exactly what you needed by a loving God, really has given me the ability to have more compassion for myself in the paths that, you know, that I have followed, which might not have been the linear, what Joseph Gurney calls brochure life, you know, like everything's supposed to look this way, that we have this idea within our Latter-day Saint culture of, you know, it's supposed to look this way. That giving you space and attempting to give you grace, that, you know, I'm just going to believe that you're telling me what really happened, and not think, she just doesn't get it. She just doesn't understand what revelation from God looks like. Or she never would have got an answer like that. It's so amazing how cracking that space with an eye on God, going, okay, you're telling me that I don't know the answers. So the way that I'm thinking about all that is probably off. That doing that would open up the way I'm thinking about a lot of things is off, you know, and God's saying, now I can work with you a little bit more.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll stop and listen more to you.
And it's kind of related to what we were talking about, where we get so caught up in the letter of the law sometimes.
Yeah.
The rules themselves end up in our mind taking precedence over the bigger picture, over the bigger message. You know, those rules or those suggestions or whatever are there to get you to a place where you embrace the greater message. You know, but when we're so consumed with it, if that's all we're focused on, that keeps us from the bigger message.
Exactly. And that thank you for wording it that way. That does feel like what I'm describing. That for me to be able to love myself came through cracking open this relationship in the path that you were taking. So just like in that therapy session when I found myself thanking you, like you did this amazing thing, you left the church, and it allowed for so much growth for me personally and for our family. But it began something that has opened up greater growth. I was going to say something, in our Latter-day Saint context, we can see, and we talk about this, how the law of Moses, and we often think of ourselves, talk about, superiority complex. We often think of ourselves as really superior to the children of Israel. Like, why are they so dumb? And God gave them, he wanted to give them something better, and then ended up having to give them the law of Moses. And then they got so caught up living the law of Moses, so many steps on the Sabbath, wear the phylactery around your head, just so many things. But what it was about was pointing them to Christ. And yet, and we can kind of understand that. We talk about it, in our Latter-day Saint, realm of, they lost sight of the bigger picture of Christ. And sometimes I think, not sometimes, but we do that. I do that. We do that. We get so caught up about it's supposed to look like this. And if there's a slight change, we're like, no, that can't be, that can't be how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And that's applicable to so many things. I mean, so many things that we get caught up in thinking it's supposed to be this way. I'm only gonna, or it's supposed to fit nicely into this little box. And if it doesn't, that's very disruptive to us. And it's a Western cultural thing in a lot of ways too, where we're just a little more rigid in our thinking in a lot of things. So yeah,
we're very much in our heads. We talked about that. We're so
heads.
much in our heads. We're we're so much in our heads. It is really interesting how I think for our safety and in our culture, in our Western culture, whatever, from the time we're babies, we're trying to figure out how to be safe, how to get our needs met. And, be protected. And when it comes to religion, like we approach it sometimes that very same way. Like, I think that we do, kind of, this feels safe and this feels like I'm going to be protected in these parameters. And please don't suggest that it could be anything different, because this is where I feel safe. And that's a very primal kind of thing. We want to feel safe.
Yeah, and predictability can make you feel safe. That if you say, like, I know this goes in box A, this goes in box B, this goes in, that feels much more predictable. You feel much more in control, and that feels a lot more safe. But again, we can get caught up in those feelings and in that space where we're missing the bigger picture. We're missing growth and evolution for ourselves. We're missing abundance and blessings coming in. We're missing because we're so focused on, I need to make sure it's predictable. I need to make sure I'm in control. I need to make sure, it fits nicely into these little boxes, where if we open ourselves up to more possibilities and things coming to us in ways that we can't even predict. Your brain can only I heard a saying once, it was like, your brain can only predict the future based on your past. So if your brain is predicting your future based on your past, whatever you've had in your past is your brain's going to project into the future. It can't really imagine things that you haven't had before. It's really hard for it to do that. But we can train it to do that, to open ourselves up to more possibilities and to start seeing blessings that are coming in different forms and coming in from ways you would never expect. Again, never in a million years would I ever have thought you would thank me for leaving the church. Like, that's a wild place. Like, that's amazing. I would have said so. I mean, but we can all open ourselves up to see that, especially in painful situations, in struggle, in strife, those are such amazing teachers and such incredible opportunities for growth. And I mean, especially even in interpersonal relationships, conflict is an opportunity for connection. and you actually, like, they've done studies that if you have a conflict with someone and you can come to a resolution about it that both parties feel happy about, you feel more connected, you feel closer
working
together
through the conflict.
yeah.
So yeah, and I do see us as a church culture moving in more and more healthy ways. It takes any change takes time, but I think there's a lot of things in my lifetime that have really accelerated a lot of really beautiful growth.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea, in my family, and in their conversion, my parents, conversion, it was everything to them, and I love that. I love the passion that they had, and there was a misperception definitely about conflict, because anger wasn't really one of those things that was okay.
Yeah.
It needed to look like this. Avoid conflict, avoid confrontation. And while I learned a lot of healthy patterns, it wasn't a healthy pattern to avoid conflict and peace at all cost, kind of, and that's what Christ-like would look like. And so that's been a huge shift for me, to give space for something like this, that no, it's that it's so much bigger and beautiful and enriching, instead of something to be feared, than dealing with conflict in healthy ways. And so dealing with differences in the way we see things, and learning to and so much I've learned from you and your siblings in their journeys, but so much about just being curious and not coming with a heart at war, a heart convinced that I need to convince you, but just a curiosity, a respect, love, respect, curiosity, that's where growth can happen. And when I'm doing something that isn't in the area of respect and love and curiosity, then it's probably a good terrain for not growth and something that can be hurtful and counter to growth. And sometimes we can't, like, seeing beyond that, like, how could that ever work? How could you ever say it was okay for your daughter to leave the church? In fact, thank her for that. How could that ever help? But that's exactly what came to me, in a spirit of absolute love and honesty, and in my, like, praying to God for words to say. And that's what came out of my mouth. And what I can learn and continue to learn from that takes me beautiful places.
Yeah. And it goes both ways, like having empathy and extending that for even though I don't believe the same as you, it's not for me, doesn't mean that you can't still believe it. I fully support you in your beliefs. If it makes you happy and you're not hurting anybody else, makes you a better person, go for it. Do it. I don't know your path. This is working for you. This is clearly where you're supposed to be. Great. And
and I love that we've got to that space in evolution.
And I do feel like it's through the conflict, through the we spent years not talking about it, and we spent years talking around it, and spent years trying to change each other's minds, and none of that was ever really productive.
Nope, you're absolutely right. Letting go of that agenda that I needed to change you has made all the difference in the world. And ditto. And it opens up that higher level of love, where you really radical love, radical acceptance of and radical support of, okay, this is your path, how can I help you? Like, that's I don't know what's right for you, only you know what's right for you. All I can do is love you through it to the best of my ability, and foster connection and growth. And something that I've been thinking about lately, sometimes we can say, I just need to love them. And that may actually be translating, I just need to endure this.
Yeah.
I just need to endure this.
Acceptance is not
I just barely
the
got,
same
you know,
thing,
became a little bit more aware of that. Like, yeah, no, it's not. Proactive, real love. And I'm not saying I'm an expert by any means, but I know that it feels different than the other thing, which is, okay, I just love them and endure this.
Yeah.
I just endure this, because in that stance, I'm still just gritting my teeth going, this tastes nasty, but I'm gonna eat it anyway. Like, you know, and really there's just so much more at the feast to go, I'm just gonna love who you are. It doesn't mean I have to agree with everything. I'm gonna love who you are. I'm gonna learn what I can. I'm gonna step down from thinking I'm the parent, for one thing, and must know better, let alone the other one of I'm the the church member and I'm on this level and you're not, you know. But it just opens up so much more of a beautiful feast of genuine exchange and learning, mind expanding, soul expanding experiences that have brought me closer in my relationship with you, and guess what, closer to God. And I think a lot of us are probably afraid, oh my gosh, if I give her space for what she's believing, what if I fall off, you know? What if I lose my testimony? And I'm not saying that isn't a risk. I'm just saying anywhere that fear is driving the bus, that's a problem. And I guess for me, my trust in God and my relationship with God has grown, because I am always carrying on a conversation with God. I'm always, trying to have that connection there. And that connection increases my connection with you and with everyone else. And has helped me see beautiful things in the church and things that really do need work, and that's okay. I mean, I still come back to, like, if God gives his beautiful children to really imperfect people like me, or like any human being, and he really, really loves his children, then to expect the church is going to be perfect it just doesn't, to me, the story I can hold right now is that just doesn't really jive. Like, he would give his children to perfect parents and he would have a perfect church, but he doesn't, because we learn amazing things in the imperfection, including in the church. Like, and so yes, I see big imperfection in the church, and I'm okay with it, because I feel like there's so much growth that is happening as we deal with the imperfection and the conflict. And that the more honest and open we get with it, the better.
Absolutely.
And the same is true. Like, I mean, for me, it started in my relationship with you. I really think and that has opened up a lot of things. It's not as if I didn't view the church with somewhat of a critical eye in a good way, you know, like, say, church culture, as opposed to what I view as the true north, the gospel of Jesus Christ. You know, what is real. You know, I saw conflicts there, but just to be able to deal with them, kind of dealing with the conflict, how I interacted with you helped open up better, healthier ways of how I interact with my church culture too.
Because no, you're keep going. It really is. It's so counterintuitive to think, especially, this, I think, in our Western culture and in Christian culture in this country, especially, people pleasing is encouraged. Conflict and aggression are discouraged. And it can get, while those things have good intentions, so much gets lost along the way. And it translates into something, fear-based instead of something love-based.
Because, I mean, I think driving seemingly good intention, if it's fear driving the seemingly good intention, then it's kind of like you have to dig out that plant from the roots and get it figured out. Like
deal with your own fear before you can effectively deal with the situation.
Yeah,
like you're not going to get the results you want if you're coming from a fear-based place. Yeah.
That seems to be working a lot better for me than being driven by fear. And I'm just open to learn, as I grow more and more, but fear has its place, but it's not meant to be in the driver's seat.
And those hard conversations that we have so much fear around, we give them more power by not speaking about it, by keeping them in the dark, by shoving them down inside ourselves, by ignoring that it's there. We're giving them so much more power, where once you drag it into the light, you see like, oh, this isn't nearly as scary as I thought it was. And actually this conversation is amazing. And now we've got this, now we've built more connection and intimacy in our relationship because of this hard thing.
And interestingly enough, like so many other things, we get it turned on its head. We think that fear, if we give it the time of day, it's going to consume everything, so we just don't talk about it. We just don't talk about it. Don't give it any space. And the opposite seems to be true in most cases. Like, let's pull this out and look at it. For me, it's always like I'm holding God's hand when I do. But it's still, it's like, God doesn't want me to let it, like, in a way, it's the gift of life is so full of those things. Like, you're only using half the gifts and using them maybe inadequately if you're not using this other half, which is, fear or the negativity, the contrary, the opposite.
Like balance, balance creates a fuller, richer experience in a lot of ways. And you can't,
and it creates richer relationships.
Richer relationships. And that anything, if you go too far with anything, it will cease to be a positive thing. Even, like the whole idea of like toxic positivity, where you refuse to acknowledge anything that isn't classified as positive and think that that's going to erase it from your life, but it doesn't. It just shoves it into the shadows. And when you shove things into the shadows, they just get stronger.
They grow like a mold.
They do. They get stronger. That's Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life and you will call it fate. Like, and so it's shadow work is really important. Pulling things out of the darkness into the light is so important. You can't, like, avoiding those things is never going to get you, that's never going to make it go away. That's never going to make it better. It's not going to magically disappear. It's just going to sit and fester and make your life harder and make your relationships harder. But doing the hard and scary thing is, there's so much beauty in it.
I do think it's a whole lot of what life's curriculum offers us. And thinking everything is supposed to look so perfect and look as it is actually so working against us.
How boring is that? If everything's perfect all the time, then where's the room for growth? Where's the learning? Where's room for anything else? It's already all perfect. And we don't grow generally under perfect circumstances. We grow when we're uncomfortable, when we're in some kind of pain or some kind of struggle or something. That's when you build up that strength and when you can really make a lot of changes and grow and learn.
Things that we wouldn't otherwise learn about ourselves. And, within our Latter-day Saint culture, we acknowledge the fall, unlike, we're unique that way. We acknowledge the fall as being something important in a good way. Which is foreign to the rest of Christianity. But that in and of itself, if we really look at that, there's so many things that, we say this is doctrine, but to allow it to have space in our personal lives. Like, oh, if the fall was important, then is this idea that everything has to be so perfect in my life really in line with what the fall was designed for? Which I feel like I'm learning more all the time, that this is the life to experience, that we needed to experience so much fallenness. Like that's how we discover things about ourselves, and that brings out strengths that we otherwise wouldn't know that we had, relationships that wouldn't even be possible, probably, just a lot of things. And that instead of trying to run away from that and resist it, that it is such a relief to kind of go, oh, it is messy, and that is part of the plan. That's a big part of the plan.
Yeah. Right. Shoot, I was just gonna say something and now I don't remember. Anyway, it's gone. But
I want to hear it.
Shoot, it'll come back to me. Just that there is so much beauty in the hard things. And how boring is it if everything's easy all the time and everything's perfect and it's our limited, here's what I was going to say, it's our limited perspective that labels things as either good or bad experiences or things, when in a cosmic sense, in a celestial sense, I don't believe that. I don't believe that there are necessarily these bad things. When you see it in a grander perspective, like when you look back on your life and you see that something that you thought was the end of the world was actually a brand new beginning, or something that you thought was going to destroy you actually made you happier than you ever could have imagined. So it's only in our limited view and attaching labels onto things because we're stuck experiencing time linearly. So it seems like a good or a bad thing at the time, but you don't really know.
Right.
And so, if we, and it is possible to kind of shed those labels, stop putting those labels on things, where you just see everything as an experience. This is an experience. What is the opportunity for me in this experience? And that's something that
you have helped me learn, really. As well as other things that had come into my life, but a lot of things that, you would share with me, and ways that I began to reframe the story. And for a long time, I'd had a way of kind of going to God saying, okay, I know I see this way, but how do you see it? And that has developed into something really important, useful, in just going, I'm, what I'm calling bad, or if I'm calling myself bad, or that was a really bad choice, or, just really, trying to shy away from putting it in those kind of descriptive, limiting ways, and just basically, saying, God, what is your version of this? The way, from my context and the way that I have been used to framing this, it feels really bad. This feels like a bad thing. But for me personally, it's just so confirming of what God can do with any experience. And I love Isaiah 40. I don't remember what chapter, but very famous, where it's beauty for ashes. And Christ, Isaiah is saying what actually Christ says in his life. He's quoting Isaiah, but it's Christ talking. I will give you beauty for ashes, joy for mourning, that we don't know enough, back to the we don't know all the answers, that anything can be metabolized into something meaningful. Does God want us to, like any parent you might, and even in bringing this into the conversation, I realized that's really limited because I only know parenting from a human perspective. You know, you might, you don't want your child, the classic example of like, they want to touch the stove, so go ahead and let them touch the stove. They'll find out what it's like to burn their little hand. You know, you wouldn't allow them to do that. You would keep them from doing that. So it does seem like God would choose, you know, would want us to avoid pain. You know, in the book of Enoch, God wept because he saw that his children wouldn't choose him, you know, that as a loving parent, you know, you know, the idea, but still this, and so I'm obviously kind of fumbling. This is growth for me, like to think about these kind of things. So what I trust is that the plan, the way we live our lives probably has so much more to do with exactly what each of us need than I used to have space for.
Yeah.
Does that mean I can't help someone because, well, that's just their path? See, and that's where this gets kind of slippery, you know? And so again, for me, it's you know, trying to be in that space of when I need to help someone, let me know. Like, I know my vision is limited. It feels right to go do this for them. But I used to be more indiscriminate about how I would try to measure out what I thought was good, you know, like pick up every hitchhiker or, you know, bring someone home, a homeless person home. I mean, and the point is I try to be a lot more intentional now about, is this the needed good, or is this getting in the way of what the needed good is in that person's life? And so that does take some real discipline to try to get to that point where I can discern between just non-discriminate acts of what I think of as good works, which for me was run a lot by religious scrupulosity, or can I become more and more acquainted with the voice of God, or what someone else might say? It's just, you know, what my heart or what the universe is drawing me toward. That there's an intentionality and a discipline in that. So it's not just like, anything goes.
Yeah.
I'm learning.
Yeah, no, that's a good insight. Because sometimes we think we're helping, but really we're not.
And we might be getting in the way of
you might be doing active harm somehow.
Person needs.
By
running in and fixing something for them, or
that's where showing love for yourself comes back in too, where it's you know, you think people pleasing is coming from a place of love, but it's coming from a place of fear. It's not it's not actually love based. And that when you love yourself more,
and if misplaced pleasing God, because I thought I was pleasing God by helping every single person that I ever saw, you know, that oh, you should go do this, you're not good enough, you need to be serving more, like do more for God, do more for God, do more for God. And it could be an endless thing that can drive a person crazy. And wear you out, definitely wear you out, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I guess, like I was trying to relate in the context of my last marriage, self-sacrificing, just thinking, if I could love this person more, if I could forgive them more, if I could just, and actually getting to a place where God was saying, are you ready to hear a different story? Because maybe, just maybe, I love you so much, I want you to stop cutting off parts of yourself and giving them away. You did that, you're doing it so much. What are you leaving me, God, to work with, to create this divine goddess that you believe I'm going to create? You know, like, stop doing this. And for me, that's
heavy. That's
revelatory.
That's a big revelation.
It was huge.
Because
I thought being Christ-like was just giving away more and more, giving and giving and giving, it wasn't a healthy self-love by any means. Like, I just didn't give space for that possibility. I just didn't forgive him. I just didn't, no. And loving that other person would have looked a lot more like setting some really clear boundaries and sticking to them. And ultimately it was basically saying goodbye, to the relationship. And doing it at that point, it had to be in a super dramatic fashion, I think, to teach my brain, and God was saying, yeah, I'm going to ask you to do some things that you have thought are just absolutely crazy. But do you trust me? And it turned my world on its head in my relationship with God. And like basically God telling me some things, and I'm saying, that doesn't sound Christ-like, and actually hearing God kind of laugh, like, did you just hear what you said to me?
That's pretty great.
I know, right? And being able to realize, man, I've had these messed up ideas about what I thought you wanted from me and who you are, like, and you never, and definitely it started with God kind of helping me see, I never wanted you to distance yourself from Deanna, or to think that you're better than her, or to think that, you have to rescue her. That's not what this is about. Guess what? You get to go on a journey that's a lot more beautiful than that.
Yeah. A greater love. Yeah. Wow.
Again, I talked a lot about myself.
No, it's great. You've had a lot of really great insights and things to share. Yeah. I think you've shared a lot of really helpful things. Yeah. Man. Yeah, we covered a lot of bases so far. Yeah. Love everyone. That's the
right.
Just love everyone and love yourself. Love yourself as much as you love everyone else.
And don't let fear drive the bus.
Yes.
And,
yes.
Like, maybe I am speaking for those who Latter-day Saint parents whose children are what we call straying. We frame that. I really want to be part of changing the way we talk about all that. And can I love and support you in whatever you choose? And again, whatever the individual journey is, but I'm just wanting the door to be cracked open for that's a possibility, to just say to God, how do you want me to handle this? How do you want me to handle this? How do you feel about this? And you might be really surprised about, what will come that will be beautiful, that you, in ways you never expected. Here's Daddy's nurse. So,
all right. Well, I guess that's it. Thank you for doing this again. I love you.
I love you. You're amazing.
You're amazing. We're amazing.
We're amazing.
Bye, guys.